Well, today is the beginning or the first worship service of our pledge campaign. The pledge campaign really started last Wednesday with a letter going out. And it is said that two of the biggest fears most of us carry is talking in public and talking about money. So I want to hold up everyone's courage today, including my own, that we're talking publicly about money. And I think it's really important that we talk about money in church, because money is a capacity to do things. It's a tool to express our values. And I want to acknowledge that the biggest item on our church budget is actually talking to you right now. And so that puts me in a possibly awkward position. And it's up to you to determine if I'm good value for money. That's not for me to say. But I will say this, that I know our staff who works hard, but they don't work for the money. You should see the energy they bring to staff meetings, the energy they bring to the church. They care so much about this religious community beyond any money. And I'm incredibly impressed and feel honored and blessed to work with the staff that we have. And this community and me took a leap of faith in each other, never having met in person last year, hiring me coming on. And we thought it was a good match, but we weren't sure as we developed. But I can only say that I feel more positive about our community, more positive about my role here, having been here for the last 7 or 8 months. I'm excited about what we're going to do in the future. And we'll be talking a lot next week about enriching our journey, like what are we going to do together as we move forward? Because I think whatever we do with the budget, whatever pledges we make today and in the coming weeks, this is about our future. And as I said in the video on Friday, that yes, reflect on what this congregation has meant to you in the past, reflect on what it's meant to you during the pandemic, reflect on what it means to you today as you gather and worship. But ultimately, when you think about your pledge and the value you place in this community, think about where we want to go as a religious community as we move forward. Now, religion is a funny relationship with money. Most of us know that, oh, religion thinks money is the root of all evil. And I remind you, it's a love of money that's the root of all evil in the Christian traditions. It's that hoarding, that grasping, that greed to hold on to money. You know, the reason the bread didn't bake was because the person was doing it through greed and not through love. But money is a capacity to work, and like any community, we do need money. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said this: the God we worship writes their names on our faces, be sure of that. A person will worship something, that which dominates will determine our life and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful about what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. What we are worshiping, we are becoming. And I know the tendency to cling to money, trust me. And I'm not trying to be stereotypically Scottish here. I mean, there is an attraction to money, we can't deny it. But I also loved the story of this couple, and the man died. But before he died, he said to his partner, he said, I want you to promise that you're going to give me half of the money to take with me, because I may need it after I die. His partner was kind of confused by this. I thought, what am I going to do around this? And then the partner thought the perfect solution. So at the funeral, it was an open casket and the person was lying there. His partner came up, wrote a check and placed it in the coffin and left it. I don't know if the check ever got cashed, because I don't know what happens in our afterlife. But we know people who cling to their money. Yet think about, when is money important to you? It's usually when we spend it in something meaningful. And I always think, if money can't buy you happiness, then you're not spending it properly. So what makes you happy? And Michael Norton of the University of British Columbia says that money can bring us joy and happiness and meaning and satisfaction, when we spend it on others. So this pledge campaign that we're having right now, I want to remind people that the pledge is a promise to play money for next year's budget, the 2021 through 2022 budget, starting in July, going through June. When you fill out your pledge form, and Chris is going to type, send a link to the pledge form, it's on the homepage of our website. We're doing online this year for all the obvious reasons, and I hope it's more convenient. Then look at that form, think about that pledge. You fill that out, that's a pledge for next year. It's not going to immediately come out of your bank account. So really take the time to reflect, how do you want to support this congregation moving forward? And I want to say, I know many of us are living with some hardship and uncertainty right now. If you are struggling financially right now, take care of yourself, put food on your table, pay your maintenance in your car, make sure you're up with your rent and your mortgage. Do not prioritize the church, prioritize your self-care, because I strongly believe the purpose of church is to alleviate suffering and not be the cause of it. So if you're struggling financially, please take care of yourself first. That is the best gift you can give to all of us. But for those of us who are not struggling, I invite you to really reflect on, what does the church mean to you, and what do you think the future of this church could be? And we're at, as Chris said in his opening, we're doing a pledge sprint this year. We're only running it for a week, and we'd like everyone to put in the reply to with the pledge cards by March 7th next week. And we're going to have a drawing for some, I hope, fun prizes. We're going to, everyone who puts in the pledge by that time, we're going to make a raffle. We're going to do a drawing, and you will get to pick a worship topic to embarrass me with, and I will lead worship on it. But if that's not enough, we've also got 4 other gifts, and it's like, you get to pick a song that we're going to play in worship. Dawn agreed to that. She was actually quite excited about the prospect. Now, it doesn't need to be a hymn. It could be a popular song, and whether we do it together as a group or individuals or a choir, that will depend on the song. And if you pick a really creative, interesting song, I may try and develop a worship service around it as well. So the more notice we have with that. So those are some of the prizes we're going to have, and there'll be more coming out during the week. I want to talk about the church budget, because we've determined a church budget for next year. And it's an aggressive budget. It's a significant increase over this last year's budget. Partly I'll be here for the whole year, but we also want to increase our programming. And I strongly, strongly believe that we need to invest in our future, because we have so much that we can do in this community in San Mateo County and the state of California and the country. And I think we can do that, but we need to make the investments so that we can do that. I think this congregation is really ready to move forward. I'm so excited about it. I'm more excited now than when I accepted the offer. And I hope you are too. I know it's difficult right now, but we've seen the value of religious communities we gather here. Now, a big question is, I want to present you with 3 questions as you think about your pledge. Does UUFRC challenge and support you in your spiritual growth? Do you believe that UUFRC is an important, or could be an important part of your everyday life? And do you believe that UUFRC helps to make your life and the life in San Mateo County better? If so, support it. If not, don't. You should believe in the mission and purpose of this church. So take a moment in silence and reflect on that. As you're reflecting in that, a big question comes up like, well, how much should I give? And now our budget is a big increase. Now, I believe in tithing. I donate 10% of my income. I don't believe it all should go to the church, though. I donate 5% of my salary to the church and 5% to other causes. And that's my choice. What what amount, what percentage do you think really reflects the value you get from this church, or the value you would like to see the church provide to a wider community? That is for you to decide. And I'm happy to meet anyone with anyone to discuss, the amount or your thoughts or your struggles. I'm always open to meet.
And now a short reflection on today's theme. Jeffrey's is this faux 1950s burger place in Menlo Park that is our family's go-to for comfort food when we've had one of those days. I was heading back to my car from picking dinner up the other night when a figure in the parking lot called my name. It turned out to be Orrin Williams from our fellowship, and he was carrying his son Connor to pick up their order. We stood in the parking lot for a bit and caught up. Orrin and I don't know each other particularly deeply, but we do have this history through UUFRC. And as we were doing the how's remote school, how's work exchange, that history started playing in my mind. I'd helped organize the Father's Day service 1.5 years ago. The picture of Orrin so vulnerably sharing how he was blown away by being a relatively new father, and with his son's toys on the podium in front of him, came flooding back to me. Having his son Gibson in RE class I co-taught with Alice Stagner popped into my mind. The energy of that table of young kids bantering, challenging, engaging. Smiling at a recurring story my oldest son, Owen, still shares with me regularly about chaperoning in the block room during service and how Connor just cracked him up. That kid is a terror, Owen says, smiling each time. Each of these images building a montage of how much I miss Orrin and his family, something I hadn't honestly thought about specifically over those months and until we saw each other. Orrin, Connor, and I said our goodbyes, and I found myself tearing up a bit as I hopped into the car. It all felt so touchingly and deeply normal. The Atlantic magazine featured an article by Amanda Mull a few weeks ago called "The Pandemic Has Erased Entire Categories of Friendship." Her point was that while each of us has focused so intently on preserving our closest friendships and our family connections through the pandemic, that we've missed the power of looser friendships. She writes, "The psychological effects of losing all but our closest ties can be profound. Peripheral connections tether us to the world at large. Without them, people sink into the compounding sameness of closed networks. Regular interaction with people outside our inner circle just makes us feel more like part of a community or part of something bigger." And I think that's right. I miss talking with the football fanatic who rang up my outrageously expensive salad bar lunch each weekday. I miss the casual conversation with whoever was in the movie line in front of us. But it's also true that what I miss with Orrin, and what I miss with so many of you here today, who I know but not deeply, is something more than those light connections Mull was writing about in the magazine. I miss the power that is our whole community, not just in services, but that manifests itself in those seemingly small but important social snippets we have knitted together over the years. I can't get that same connection in line at the movies because we all here share a set of principles and support that goes much deeper than whatever will be showing on that screen I'm about to view with a stranger. Not long after seeing Orrin and Connor, the pledge email came into my inbox. I've thought a lot about Reverend Brian's 2 questions he's repeatedly asked us since joining last year. What do you love and what breaks your heart? And lately I found myself blending Reverend Brian's 2 questions into one, which is, what breaks your heart? What breaks my heart open to love? For me, this community regularly and uniquely provides those moments, like bumping into Orrin and Connor in the parking lot of a burger joint, that simply break my heart open. To know that feeling is priceless. Or it's at least worth our pledge level from last year, plus the outrageously expensive salad bar savings we've collected during shelter in place. And if I was tracking, John, I believe that's an added $750 by your accounting, and with a payback that is infinite.
Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love that you give. Beautiful words, but not always easy to practice, especially when we are stressed. And right now, things are pretty stressful. We're living through multiple crises, facing an uncertain future, and trying to keep up with daily life in a pandemic that's just dragging on. It's a lot. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed, I find it hard to open my heart and be part of the love. When I'm stressed, I tend to seize up. I pull my energy inward, trying to regain a sense of control. I've been conditioned to believe that clenching and pulling inward is the way to ensure my survival. I know I'm not alone in this response to stress. It plays out on every level of society, but it's not our only option. Here in spiritual community, we are called to recognize that life is stressful and that we have other options besides clutching, closing down, and seeking control. The word religion stems from the Latin root relegare, which means to tie or bind back together. Here in religious community, we practice relaxing into the ties that bind us back together, opening our hearts, consciously becoming part of the larger love, the spirit or the web of life that holds us all. Right now, in the midst of the myriad crises we face, is the perfect time to practice opening our hearts, acknowledging our interdependence, and sharing what we have in a spirit of love. Because friends, that ultimately is how we thrive, individually and collectively. Opening to one another, leaning on each other, sharing our gifts, and creating together the conditions for collective flourishing. I love our pledge drive theme this year because it's kind of radical. Maybe even more radical than sticking it to the man, although admittedly it lacks the shock value. In a dominant American culture so shaped by consumer capitalism, it is radical to suggest that opening our hearts is key to enrichment. Opening, not clutching or grasping, is the path to spiritual and material abundance. This claim challenges a core message so many of us have received, and that message has to do with the idea of enough, the tension between scarcity and sufficiency. Scarcity, writes global activist Lynn Twist in her book, The Soul of Money, is the great lie. Life in general is abundant. There is enough to sustain us. Yet, as Twist writes, no matter who we are or what our circumstances, we swim in conversations about what there isn't enough of: time, money, sleep, accomplishments. There never seems to be enough, and this causes us immense stress. Underlying the chronic sense that we don't have enough is the deeper, more pernicious sense that we ourselves aren't enough. This mindset of scarcity is so pervasive that we can lose touch with our inherent knowing of what is enough. Although many of us seek out spiritual community to experience something besides insufficiency and dissatisfaction, we often carry the dominant mindset of scarcity with us into our spiritual communities. We Unitarian Universalists are certainly not immune. In fact, UUs have the unfortunate distinction of making more money on average than members of other denominations, but giving less money away. We are trapped in a mindset of scarcity, even if we have more than our share. I understand the scarcity mindset well. I too am infected by it. I grew up in an upper middle class family with plenty of resources spanning generations, but my parents were frugal and concerned about waste. Although it wasn't their intention, I grew up believing there might not be enough. Instead of saying, we are not going to spend our money on soda, for instance, my well-meaning parents told us we can't afford soda. So I grew up believing we didn't have 50 extra cents for an occasional soda. I was also taught it was impolite to talk about money. What I learned was that money was something inscrutable, tightly controlled, and emotionally unpleasant. This not only fostered a misplaced sense of scarcity and anxiety around resources, it also didn't prepare me well for a healthy relationship with money. I'm not alone in inheriting what financial therapist Barry Tesler calls money wounds. We all have them. Unhealthy and emotionally laden stories about money that drive similarly unhealthy and emotionally laden behaviors around money. And as my fellow seminarian, Lauren Levewood, says, when we come together in religious community, we all bring our money stories, our money wounds with us. And because the dominant culture in UU congregations, as is in my own family of origin, characterizes money as a private matter, this all roils below the surface of our congregational life. Now, if my partner George is listening, he'll be surprised to hear me say what I'm about to say. Because George talks about money and tracks money on complicated spreadsheets for a living, well, I have spent the majority of my life avoiding both of those activities. But through my participation in spiritual community and training for ministry, I'm learning that money really is an important topic, not only materially, but spiritually as well. Neither good nor bad in and of itself, money is a tool meant to be used, meant to circulate. Money, writes Will Saunders, is the way in which we express our aspirations, our dreams, our beliefs, our ideals. Money can be used to build up or tear down, to serve or to dominate, to liberate or oppress. We have the opportunity here in this spiritual community to learn how to relate to money in ways that express our deepest aspirations and ideals and free us from the grip of scarcity mentality. So how can we do this? Well, we might begin by consciously cultivating a sense of sufficiency. One simple yet powerful way to do this is to focus on the resources we already have, individually and collectively. Instead of bemoaning what we lack, we can appreciate what we have and find power and possibility in that. The Buddha famously taught that what we pay attention to grows. So when we focus on the goodness of what we already have, the fullness of the present moment, we foster a sense of sufficiency, which can be deeply liberating. Lynn Twist writes that when we let go of scarcity, we discover the surprising truth of sufficiency. By sufficiency, she writes, I don't mean a quantity of anything. Sufficiency isn't 2 steps up from poverty or 1 step short of abundance. It isn't a measure of barely enough or more than enough. Sufficiency isn't an amount at all. It's an experience, a context we generate, a declaration, a knowing that there is enough and that we are enough. When we generate sufficiency as our context, we naturally loosen up a bit. When we trust in enough, we don't feel the need to clutch or control. We are more likely to be generous with what we have. And when we are more generous with what we have, we feel more joy, satisfaction, and connection in our lives. When we are more generous with what we have, we can grow more of what we want together. Appreciating what we have puts us in touch with our resources. Even if it's hard for us to pay our bills, we realize we have many other kinds of resources. And when we think of ourselves as an interdependent, as a community, we realize that our collective resources abound. There are no haves and have-nots, says Twist. We are all haves, and our assets are diverse. In the alchemy of collaboration, we become equal partners, we create wholeness and sufficiency for everyone. What an apt description of beloved community, right? A community of mutual support and collaboration, where each contributes their gifts for the benefit of the whole, where together we strive to create a context of sufficiency for everyone. I think this is what stewardship is all about, my friends. Seen in these terms, we can embrace the pledge drive as an opportunity to deepen spiritually and grow more of what we want to see, become more of who we want to be in the world together. So stick it to the man if you want, but do so with an open heart, knowing that sharing our gifts in community, leaning into our connectedness, is a radical, life-sustaining practice. My invitation and hope for us is this. May we at UUFRC generate a context of sufficiency together, one that fosters joy, generosity, gratitude, and growth in ourselves and in our world. May it be so.
Opening our hearts, enriching our journey, that's the theme. And I really want you to live into that. Really take time during this week to reflect on what that means to you. One of the things I thought about when I was looking at that opening our hearts, I was like, that's easy to do in good times, but is it easy to do in day-to-day life when things are hard? And I love this quick story I'll tell you about this woman who's getting off a subway train in New York, and she gets off and she's looking around to see if she's got all her stuff, and she's only got one glove, and she looks and she sees the glove on the seat of the train that's about to depart, and she grimaces, and then she has an idea, and she throws the glove just as the doors are closing in the subway station to land beside the other glove. That's just an example of that day-to-day of being open to generous. Like, I'm about to lose that, at least I can make it appear and give a gift to someone else. One of the things about this idea of opening our hearts, it's like, yes, we want to expand our capacity to give love, to give our talents, to give our time, give our actions, and give our money. But also opening our hearts allows us to receive all these wonderful gifts, the beauty of the universe gives to each of us. And I think it's important that opening our heart is a two-way exchange. Yes, we want to be more generous, but we also want to be open to receiving all that we get from this community, from our friends, from our neighbors, from our family, and from the universe. And I mentioned last week that we often, to replace something we don't like, we need to replace it by its opposite. And we often have buyer's remorse. Some of us may have even experienced that this weekend, where we buy something and kind of wish we haven't. What's the opposite of buyer's remorse? I think it's giving. Give us contentedness, give us satisfaction, give us comfort. And that's what I hope you feel as you give generously to this community. I hope you don't have buyer's remorse. I hope you give us comfort, give us connectedness, give us satisfaction, give us pleasure. And I hope you give with generous love. So let us all bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. Let us live our lives and put our faith in action as generous people. A generous person lives with a sense of trust and satisfaction and abundance. We have a willingness to give and the ability to inspire giving and service in others. I mean, we all live generously with helping hands, open minds, and loving hearts.